Our next guest is no stranger to television news and this station in particular, and most of you. Please welcome the author of Never in My Wildest Dreams, A Black Woman's Life in Journalism. Belva Davis, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Good to be here. That picture, incidentally, was taken on a KPIX set.
Was it really?
My co-anchor was David Fowler, and they just sort of chuffed him off there.
It is so wonderful to see this book, finally, to read your story. You have been, and they're calling you now, a Bay Area legend.
Oh boy, that's a heavy, heavy title to carry around.
You were and are the first African-American woman who was an anchor on the West Coast, is that right?
Absolutely, and this station was owned by Westinghouse back then, and they were pioneers in race relations and diversity, and so they hired the two black people who worked in the entire Bay Area market, and for me, the only woman west of the Mississippi who was black.
How many interviews do you think you've done in your career?
Oh my God, thousands, I'm sure. I did the noon news for years, and so books were my thing. I mean, there was always an author.
See, I'm following in those big footsteps right now.
Yeah.
What is so interesting about this story? People see you as a successful woman, a successful journalist. It was a very tough time for you growing up. You grew up in the same state that I grew up in, Louisiana, in North Louisiana, in Monroe.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the motivation to write the book was to say to young people who really think they have it tough, let me tell you about tough. And this is how it was. And no matter what.
Segregation and
yes,
just
total segregation. When I started, I couldn't work any place that was not black oriented. It was totally segregated media. And Ben and I were the two people, he first in newspapers and him over here at KPIX. There was just no place for us. And that's why when my story starts is at the Republican Convention in 1964 here, where we were not able to get press credentials because they did not credential people of color.
Some of this book is very tough to read. At your lowest point, what kept you going?
You know, I try not to think about the lowest point because I found long ago that was not going to get me anywhere. You can't go uphill if you're looking backwards and down, and so I tried to always focus on what is ahead for me. How can I make the most of this? What's the message of what just happened to me? Even as a child, I used to try to analyze those things because I didn't think I did anything that made me deserve to be in whatever difficulty I was in at the time. But I did try to come up with systems to reassure myself that I could still move forward. Yeah.
You have interviewed some incredible interviews. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King.
Absolutely, one of the pearls.
And also, tell me about the interview with Fidel Castro.
That was probably one of the most energized interviews. And when you realize that you're doing it in two languages, you wonder, how do you get an intimate conversation? But with Fidel, you do, because he is a commander-in-chief of the conversation and you when you're doing it. And it was wonderful. Whatever the topic, he knew more than I did about it.
As we're taking a look at these pictures, here you are with Fidel Castro. Did we miss the one with the pageant? Did that
May have, but anyway, that was on greeting him, and that's Congresswoman Barbara Lee there. And I worked on a pageant for colored girls because black girls were not allowed to enter the Miss America pageant, and this was my civil rights statement. So we started our own pageant, and eventually things changed, and it was a statewide pageant, and you got a screen test, and you got the kinds of things that other people did. And the picture was of the gal who, Carolyn Blakey, who won the Sacramento City Convention contest, and then went on to compete in Los Angeles against.
You are still seen on the air this week in Northern California on KQED,
yes,
public television. Yes, you're still working. What advice would you give to people in this business, a business that is rapidly changing? Or anyone who's in a business that is changing?
I think stay in it as long as you're passionate about it. Stay in it as long as you care about it. Fight to stay in it when it's like that. But when it's time to move on, you know it inside. Move on.
And finally, that quote that kept you going, there was one quote you want to talk about.
Don't be afraid of the space between your dreams and reality. If you can dream it, you can make it so. It's kept me going.
Belva, thanks so much. It's an inspirational story not to be missed by anyone trying to achieve their dream. Never in My Wildest Dreams can be purchased in your local bookstore and online. And thank you so much for joining us for Bay Sunday. We'll see you next week.